I am seated here with Dr. George Michell on his lovely balcony in Goa with a sort of confused rooster and a cow somewhere in the background. This lovely setting. George, thank you for your time, and thank you for doing this. I suppose I want to talk to you a little bit about temples and architecture, um, from the perspective of like somebody who knows very little about this, right? And what are they looking at when they look at a temple? So I think my first question really is, what is a temple,
Right.
right? Like, what is is just any sort of shrine with an idol, would that qualify as a temple? And then how did that sort of change? If that is the case, then how did it become these sort of large elaborate sort of complexes with towering spires and gateways and stuff that we think of when we think of ancient or medieval temples?
So India is not the only place in the world where there are temples,
Of course,
of
yeah,
course,
yeah,
and temples have been built in most cultures over all of the history that we know.
yeah,
Basically, a temple is a place where our world, the world of humans,
mm,
can make contact with this another world,
right,
however we talk about it. Let's say the world of the gods, the world of the divine. It's a place where this connection can be made. That's why people go there, make donations, build temples, because they need to do these things and they need a special place to do it.
right,
So when I first came to India, to make some money, I used to take foreigners around and show them temples, of course, and other things, historical India. And people would ask these absurd questions like, who is Shiva and things like that.
yeah,
And then I realized, well, they don't even know who these gods are. So for these foreigners, including myself, I thought I would write a book called An Introduction to the Hindu Temple.
mhm,
And I thought this would be very good. It would be for, foreigners going to and explaining the mythology, a bit of the history, of the different styles, and, a general introduction
yeah,
by putting the temple into the broadest sociological, economic, historical, mythological, religious context.
mhm,
So I published this book, and then I discovered that quite a lot of people in India were reading this book. I had not intended this. I thought everybody in India knows all this. I don't have to.
yeah,
Introduction. And then I did projects with young architecture students in India, and they would say that they'd read the book. And I said to them, but you go to temples. Yes, we go to temples with our families. We go there and we do everything, but we never think about it
yeah.
as a piece of architecture.
You're always engaged in prayer, basically.
Prayer and with the family, and they don't look at anything, really.
Yeah.
They go and do puja and then come out and get away from the family, all that. So it was interesting for me how people in this country, steeped as they are in the culture and temple-going activity, don't always think about the temple as an architectural piece and its history and the different styles and the way it's built. The things that I, as a historian, are concerned with.
Right. So, what then would qualify as a temple? Like, if we go back to that question, right?
Right. Well, of course, just about anything where this point of contact can be made functions as a temple, but not necessarily built in permanent materials.
Right.
So you can have a tree shrine. The roots of a tree can function as a temple. Something made of wood, a cavern, a natural, grotto, or a grotto that has been artificially extended.
Right.
Or a riverside place, a few steps beside the river.
Right.
And then, as you know, in households, Hindu households in India, very often there's a space with a few little images, maybe a little bronze or something.
Yeah.
And this functions as a household temple.
Right.
So they don't have to be grand anything, but they're places where humans, people, will make contact, wish to make contact, to benefit from divine power and help.
So I think it might be fair to say that the original sort of temple as well were probably these natural sort of spaces, like the caves or the riversides, or trees. Those are probably the spaces where people sought contact with the divine originally, and then there might have been some transition into sort of making a little bit more of a permanent structure around it in some way or the other. Is that fair to say?
Well, this is a model we have.
Yeah.
We believe Indian culture is very ancient. The mythological stories go back before history.
Yeah.
But we have no temple architecture.
Right.
temple architecture in India is not that ancient compared to other parts of the world.
Yeah.
So from about 1st, 2nd BC, of course, we have Buddhist temples, and then from 4th, 5th AD, we then have, of course, temples to Hindu cults, to Shiva and Vishnu.
Right.
The question is that we always ask, what happened that suddenly they decided they needed to build in permanent materials?
Yeah.
And we don't have the answers.
Right.
When they start building in brick or proper wood or stone, of course, cut stone. But it did happen at a certain time. Also, when they started making images, murtis, suddenly we have Shiva lingas, we have Vishnu in various incarnations. But they don't go back that far in time. Before the 2nd, 3rd BC, we don't have any imagery and we don't have any temple architecture. But we know that people worship these gods and goddesses on hilltops and caverns beside rivers, but they left nothing for us, almost nothing for us to observe anymore.
Right. And, you touched a little bit about the Buddhist architecture that probably predates the Hindu architecture that we know of, right? Is that the oldest sort of structures that we have in the Indian subcontinent when it comes to like a permanent structure? Would it be these Buddhist sort of...
Well, they are. And so I always used to wonder, here is Hinduism or the Hindu cults, which go back into prehistory. They predate Buddhism.
Yeah.
But yet the earliest monuments we have in permanent materials are structural and rock cut.
Right.
Stupas and monasteries.
Right.
So how do you explain that?
Yeah.
And again, we don't have a very satisfactory answer. It's something to do with the idea of commemorating a person who becomes a god, and you do this in permanent materials. Now, whether these are ideas that came from outside India or something we don't know.
Right.
But from the 3rd century BC, we suddenly have this profusion of wonderful Buddhist monuments. Some of them are built in marble, some are cut out of granite and, other sort of rock. We know all this. And they are, because they're in permanent materials, those in stone or out of stone are there. Those in brick have not survived so well, of course.
Right.
And then at a certain point, as Buddhism was declining and these Hindu cults became more popular, it seems that patrons of those cults wanted to build or make permanent structures. So we have rock-cut Hindu shrines, which come out of the rock-cut Buddhist. We have brick Hindu temples, again coming out of the... So it's not like copying so much the forms, but the techniques, the idea goes back to that.
Right. So what would you say are the different styles of temple architecture in India?
Well, every region of India has a stylistic identity. Yeah. And that's to some extent to do with the materials. But we can, if we've done a bit of training, we can say this is Gujarati, this is Bengali, this is Deccan, this is Tamil, and so forth and so on. But it doesn't matter about the style so much as that the principles of the temple architecture are constant.
Okay.
Because the most important thing in temple visits is what we call darshan.
Yes.
The visual connection
with
the god or the object of worship. You have to look. You have to make exchange visually with what you are worshipping. Only then can this transaction be made.
Correct.
So the most important thing about a temple is that there's a way into the temple that leads to the sanctuary, what we call an axis, a corridor. Every temple, no matter what style it is built, has this axis.
Right.
Even the very complicated temples, elaborate temples, still have this way of going in. And as you know, when you come to make a visit, the first thing you do is you go into the temple and off you go towards the sanctuary.
Yeah.
And if you can't make the offering, the priest in charge will take your offering and do it for you. Yeah. But you have to look. You have to see into the sanctuary, into that dark chamber.
Yeah.
The linga, the image, whatever it is that you're worshiping, you have to make that contact.
Yeah. Yeah.
The priest can make offerings on your behalf, but you have to have that contact. And this dictates the architectural layout.
Right.
So even in complicated temples like the great ones in Tamil Nadu, you have these entry gateways, these gopuras, then you have these elaborate columned halls, these mandapas, and they're lined with statues and things. So you go through the gopura, you continue along the corridor, then you go into another mandapa, and you continue along, and then you continue. And maybe it's quite a long, several minutes of walking in those huge
in the
complexes.
Ones, yes.
You think of Madurai or Tanjore,
and
then you end up at this dark, badly lit, claustrophobic chamber, which is like a cave.
Yes.
It has to have the feeling of oppression and solidity.
Yes.
It doesn't have windows. It's not light. It's not airy.
Yes.
And all temples have this.
Yes.
That is the quality.
Yes.
The style of the columns, the gopura gateways, the carvings will all perhaps be different.
Correct.
In different parts of India, depending, and whether they're early or they're late or they're from the 18th or 19th centuries, they'll all be different. But this principle remains.
Right. So what are the kind of, when people were building these bigger, sort of larger temples, right? What kind of materials were they working with? Primarily, I would imagine it's stone, but there's also, that's the ones that we're left with. So it's easier for us to identify. But is there a specific type of stone, or is it whatever's locally available? Are there instances of people building with material that is not locally sourced, and there seems to be like some kind of economy that where they're importing it from somewhere and paying import duties or whatever?
You just have to think of the big temple in Tanjore. It's built in this very high quality granite.
Yes.
But there's no granite in the delta of the Kaveri.
Right.
Or hardly.
Right.
So all this stone had to be brought and presumably floated down from quarries.
Right.
But they wanted it in permanent materials.
Yes.
They didn't want it in brick, which had been the previous.
Right.
He wanted something permanent, and Raja, the great Chola king, paid for it.
Yeah.
So of course, in Hampi, there's plenty of granite available everywhere.
Yeah.
The temples are built of local materials.
Yeah.
But it just depends. It just depends how much money is involved, what is available. Marble had to be brought. It was also a way of displaying your power and your economic status, that you could afford to bring these high quality stones from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And if there was good quality wood, you would use it, and so forth and so on.
Yeah, it's like people who want to build their house nowadays in Italian marble or whatever, right? Like it's you're signaling to the world. Look at my fancy house.
And you wanted to build in a material that had the best weatherability.
Yes.
And could also take detail in carving.
Yes.
You see, and sometimes, of course, people made mistakes.
Yes.
They built in a stone, and the stone started to deteriorate.
Right.
Yeah. So some sandstones don't last very well.
Yeah.
And maybe people didn't know at first.
Yeah.
And then they shifted to another material.
Yeah, you have to wait for 100 years or so to realize that.
Yes.
Yeah, nobody.
So there was, of course, all that to do with building trade. So these large temples were built by trained craftsmen who had for generations been professional builders.
Yeah.
And they had all these, techniques. How do you lay the basement? How do you put the stones? What material, what instruments do you use to cut the stone, these iron implements? They were all specialized craftsmen. And they guarded their knowledge.
Yeah.
Because that was their livelihood.
Because,
And then priestly people who wrote in Sanskrit tried to codify what they did.
Right.
So we have these shastras, they're called, these manuals, these theoretical manuals. What do you do when you build a temple? You do this, then you do that, and how many proportions. But these texts are not written by the builders.
Right.
These written by the theoreticians.
Right.
The Brahmins.
Right.
The builders probably couldn't understand or read Sanskrit. They had no reason to.
Yeah.
They were in local languages.
Yeah.
So you can't always judge the buildings in terms of the shastras, because it doesn't give you the whole story.
Right. Sorry, I just want to go back a little bit to the tools you mentioned. The iron tools.
Right.
Do we have any examples of the kind of tools that they use? Are there like...
I think probably there are the odd tool that has, been discarded and was discovered, but they are iron, and people have worked by looking at the way the stones are treated. They've been working out what sorts of tools they used.
Right.
And of course, there are occasions when the craftsmen signed their names.
Okay.
Blah, blah, built this or did this. They were proud.
It's not like graffiti. They have... It's in a prominent location that they
It is a graffiti, but it's a graffiti. It's not done by, people afterwards done by the workmen.
Right, right.
And in the Hoysala monuments, the temples in Belur, Halebid, and Somanathapura, and the other ones of that period, there are instances in these Hoysala temples where the people who sculpted these beautiful images for which the temples are famous were sufficiently proud and sufficiently independent to sign their work.
Right.
So this was done by so-and-so.
Right, right.
And then these craftsmen, these sculptors, they responded to commissions. So in 2 years, they worked on this temple and they did so many images. And then came another job and they moved to another place and they did the images there. And they signed them there.
Right.
And so it's been possible for certain artists to work out where they went, when to do the work.
Right.
Because they responded, they had to do the work at the temple, in situ.
Right.
So when they were paid, they were moved and spent a couple of years working on this temple. So it's very interesting. It's an insight into how commissions made artists into, they had to journey all the time.
Yeah.
And this is nothing unique to India.
Yeah.
We know this for Europe.
Yes.
We know that painters in the Renaissance, they had a commission in this city, then they moved to another city to do another commission.
Yeah.
That's what they had to do.
You follow the money, essentially.
Well, you had to do the work on the spot.
Yes.
You see, writers and maybe composers could write the music and send it.
Not so for architects.
And it's true for architects. And we have some of these names.
Yeah. Because
they were proud. At Patronage, we know the name of somebody who was responsible for part of one of the temples. And he has a title.
Right.
Some fanciful title, which I can't remember anymore. But, something which is not historical, but, made up title.
Is there, do we have, so there's obviously a transition from simple sort of structure to the more elaborate and complex ones. Within certain temple premises, do we have examples of, a transition that was done badly and sort of abandoned, and people, you're trying to do something and then, they realize, oh, we've goofed up, we're just going to finish this really quickly and then go to the next one and fix our mistakes. Do we have?
Well, there's things which are mistakes.
Yeah.
There are things which are unfinished.
Yeah.
Money ran out. Something happened. War.
Yeah.
At Patronage, we have one temple. All the carvings are sketched out, but almost none of them are finished.
Right.
For whatever reason. We can only hypothesize.
Right.
And at Patronage, there's also a temple that was laid out very elaborately, and then they ran into trouble. It got too near something that already had been built before, and they had to abandon it.
Right.
They miscalculated.
Right.
So it was a mistake.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what happens in buildings.
Yeah.
I mean, and of course, temples collapsed. They wanted a very big span, and they overdid it and fell down. They had to redo it.
Yeah.
I mean, European architecture is full of this.
Yes.
Because if you're pushing the limits of structure,
yes,
you want to do bigger, longer, wider, higher.
Yes.
Things happened
yes.
that didn't always work out.
Yeah.
And then you learned from the mistake. You realized that this time we have to make it thicker.
Correct.
We can't have so many meters. We have to make it lesser.
Somebody check the surroundings to see if there's another structure nearby.
Yeah. We can learn. So this is part of the what you call the progression of building technology.
Right.
And of course the events of historical circumstances.
Yes. So
which interfered.
Yes.
You have some temples which are built. Then the money runs out, the king dies, whatever happens.
Yeah.
50 years later, 150 years later, a new group of people come and they take this little temple, dinky temple, they turn it into a big temple. They put more money into it.
Right.
Tirumala.
Yeah.
Tirupati is a good example of this.
Yeah.
In the 11th and 12th centuries, it was a second-rate little shrine. Quite popular as a mountain god.
Yeah.
People would go and worship, there. But under the Vijayanagara kings in the 15th and 16th century, this particular god was upgraded.
Yeah.
He became an imperial god.
Right.
They put the god on their coins.
Yeah.
They signed with this god. So they took this dinky temple and turned it into a huge place by investing lots of money, building huge halls and gateways and that, putting gold leaf on everything, and then also putting statues of themselves like this.
Praying to
in front, praying permanently, as I showed.
Yeah.
So this was one way of upgrading the temple in terms of religious significance, architecture and art.
Right, right.
So these things happened. It's called history and architecture, you know.
I just wanted to check with you about how do we, if you are observing some of these, or you're going to like Hampi or Tanjavur or any of these sort of great Ajanta, Ellora, any of these places, how do you start observing without getting lost? Are there certain things that you can do to ground yourself and say, okay, look for this, and then sort of orient yourself like this, and then we'll tackle the rest of it when it comes to
yes, well, the problem with foreigners when they come to India, they don't know how to look at a temple. And then I discovered that there are plenty of people in India who also don't know how to look at a temple.
I was just going to say,
it's a looking problem.
Yeah.
It's not a problem of your background. So one of the ways we can do it, and I have done it, is we stand in front of a temple building and I say, now look at the way in which vertically you've got this at the bottom, got this in the middle, got this in the top. And look at the way this repeats. You see, this is the same all the way along. Then look at it, horizontally. Here you have the porch, here you have the hall, here you have the sanctuary, and there's a tower. And the top of the tower coincides with the image or the linga inside.
Right.
There's a sort of logic there.
Right.
That's how it is. And when we go inside, we say, look at the sculptures, look at this, just take it easy and work out all the bits, the components.
Yeah.
And then see how the components are orchestrated, how they're put together,
yeah.
with what skill, and how they're done in Tamil Nadu is completely different to how they're done in Rajasthan. But the process of looking and analyzing is something which is possible to do, and everybody can do it. You don't have to have a PhD.
Yeah.
You don't have to be able to read Sanskrit. Anybody can look at it, and if they're shown, the moment they can look and identify and say, oh, yes, this works with that, and this is a repeat, and blah, blah, then the whole thing starts to unravel.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it becomes familiar, but it becomes something that they can see.
Correct.
And therefore, it becomes more interesting.
Yeah.
And this is something that anybody can do, and people like me, it's our job to do it. Yeah. So that's what I try to do in my books, with the pictures and the text and the drawings.
Yeah. So it's a practice, and once you understand the logic of it, it just becomes a lot easier, essentially, in some way.
Well, it's like listening to music. Yeah. The moment you understand the way a raga is constructed, what people are doing with the raga, how they're improvising on the raga, then the music becomes more significant.
Yeah.
As against just an experience.
Yeah.
Then you start to understand, and you also understand the skill with which the player or the singer is expounding. Right. So it's the same in architecture. You understand the skill with which they can create these beautiful looking, exquisitely carved or fashioned elements. You see, you have to appreciate the craftsmanship.
Yeah, yeah.
Whether somebody is singing or somebody's playing a musical instrument or somebody's carving a bit of stone.
Yeah.
And in India, we have enormous amount of marvelous things to admire.
Of course. I just want to about that. The specifics of it, right? Like sculptures and stuff like that. Are there things that we can look out for in the materials themselves that tell us things like, so can we look at the color of the stone and see, okay, this is not granite, this is sandstone? Like, how much experience do you need to be able to start,
not very much, but I mean, it's I think most people can tell the difference between sandstone and granite.
Yes.
And wood.
Yes.
And then they can tell the difference between a granite that takes no detail. So it's rather crude, the carving.
Yeah.
But at Hampi, some of the columns are carved with enormous detail, amazing detail.
Right.
Because the stone is hard to fashion.
Yeah.
So they're enormously skilled,
Yeah.
And the granite used in Tamil temples is very fine, and so you get these very slender colonnettes, beautifully carved. And in the north, we have marble, which of course takes this very crisp, beautiful detail.
Yeah.
And this is what Indian craftsmen are specialists for.
Yeah.
They know how to do that. They love to do it.
Yeah.
And then why I get upset for people today is when they don't appreciate the quality and the craftsmanship. And when they're putting a new electric light in the temple, they put a fluorescent tube over a beautifully carved image, or they just dig a hole somewhere, in a colonnette to put a plug in, instead of respecting the workmanship.
That is
the artistry, then destroyed by their lack of understanding or interest.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that sort of grates, I mean, I have acquaintances who are of a more conspiratorial nature, in terms of what they think about some of these places, and the whole idea of aliens built things or like whatever, which is really bizarre. Like people are not able to wrap their heads around the fact that this is actually possible through effort, skill, learning, and
Well, it's like Ellora, this amazing, Kailasanath temple.
Yeah.
In a big, completely cut out of the rock.
Yes, yes.
It's a monolithic. It's a bit of mountain.
Yes.
Fashioned as a temple,
yes.
And there's a trench around it.
Yes.
So it stands freely.
Yeah.
It's one of the most amazing pieces of workmanship.
Yeah.
Not only in India, but anywhere in the world.
That's the favorite one for the alien. That was the one that
the aliens yes. But in fact, there's an inscription saying who did it. This king said he took credit. And he said then people went and couldn't believe it. It amazed them.
Yeah.
They didn't say it was aliens, though,
yeah.
or gods. They said it was the king, and it. Of course, they used words like it was like a God-given,
Yeah.
Of course.
Because it had to have a certain divine...
Well, it's not hard. You go there, it looks like it's something beyond human endeavor.
Yeah.
But it's the pyramids, they are totally amazing. They're still amazing. 5,000-6,000 years after they were made,
yeah,
for their scale and their perfection of geometry.
Yeah.
And I know people would like to say that they couldn't be done by humans, but for sure they were done by pharaohs with lots of slaves.
Yes, and a large number of skilled workers also, of course, right?
Yes, people, the geometry, how they calculated it, how they got the perfect angles all the way up. Or like in Ellora, they were able to carve without making mistakes. You can't just do something and say, this doesn't work, I'll do it again. You're going down into the mountain. You only have one shot.
Yes.
So the control of the workman and the skill is something which we can only be amazed at, but they're definitely human skills.
So do you think that they had sort of like an apprentice, I don't know, like a place where they tried this out first before they attempted it?
There's sometimes we find these look like they're sort of, dry runs. Let's try this and then we'll do it somewhere else.
Yeah.
We also have mistakes, as I said.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there must have been all these hierarchies within the building industry, from the master architects to the people who executed particular details. You're a specialist for doing this, so you just do that. So the whole thing must have been worked out. And there must have been models and drawings. You don't just go into a cliff face, well, I think start here, and then maybe we'll do this.
Yeah.
It's not random,
Yeah.
Somebody must have had a plan.
Yes.
It must have all been worked out. And there are all these geometric ratios. They're all things in relationships. Right. So the mathematics had to be all worked out.
Right.
But we don't have any drawings, and we don't have any models. There's just now and again we come across at Bhojpur in Madhya Pradesh, there are some rock faces, rocky, and there are drawings, incised architectural drawings on the rock faces, which relate to a particular unfinished temple.
Right. Okay, that's fascinating.
Yes, so it's a clue.
Yes,
as to that they did have drawings.
Yeah,
and it's just that we don't have them.
Couple of questions more. I just, when we typically talk about temples, we almost always associate them with a specific dynasty or a king and, so on. But outside of the sort of, royal and the aristocratic class, do we have temples that were built by ordinary people? Do we have temples that were built by, let's say, merchant classes? Did merchants band together? And we know that some of them donated to these great temples, but do we have them actually building their own? And is that...
Well, it was a matter of money.
Yes.
So ordinary people could hardly build a stone temple.
Yeah.
They might have a little shrine in their backyard.
Yeah.
But when it came to a major monument, of course, the elite wealth,
yes,
that could be ruling people,
yes,
the wives, the children, the people of the families that ruled, merchants, and of course, provincial governors, people who came from a particular village, they came to the capital where they had big careers, they sent the money back, and in their hometown, they built temples.
Right.
So they were part of the ruling elite.
Yeah.
But they weren't royal.
Yeah.
And we have this information. And at a place called Itagi, which is not very far from Hospet and Hampi, there is a temple built by a local governor. And inside the temple, there are some little figures up on the ceiling. And there's an inscription saying they are portraits of the donor, the general's parents and family. So the family is brought in.
Right.
And sometimes the shrines are dedicated to ancestors.
Yes.
Yeah. That's in Somanathapura is built by a general.
Yes.
Not by a king.
Yeah.
And then outside Somanathapura village, there's a small shrine dedicated to the general's parents and ancestors. So there was a way of bringing the family into temple building.
Right. So I mean, it's a way of preserving like the posterity of the family and
yes, prestige, you know.
Yeah.
And it's true, the inscription and the temples are still there. We don't know who these generals are, much about them.
Yeah.
But they're good works.
Yes.
And this is true not only in India, of course.
Of course. Speaking of which, sort of brings me to the last question. You know, we have famously temples outside of India, of course, like, you know, some of them, like Angkor Wat, for instance, is massive, right? Are they built on the same principles? And how do we see local sort of influences in those temples? Like, how do they manifest? If, you know, this is...
Well, let's talk about Angkor in Cambodia.
Yeah.
9th to 12th century sort of period.
Yeah.
There is these astonishing, huge monuments. Many of them dedicated to Vishnu and then later to Buddha.
Yeah.
And we know the kings who built them. We know the dates. And they have images taken from Hindu mythology.
Yeah.
So they're Hindu deities.
Yeah.
And these deities they hold the same things as Indian deities. But the temples and the deities don't look the same.
Yeah.
So it's a complete reinvention of the Indian tradition under their local, traditions.
Yeah.
It's true in Java and Borobudur and Prambanan. So Southeast Asia has this Indian-influenced tradition, which is part of their culture.
Yeah.
We have no temple in India that looks like Angkor.
Yeah.
Or Borobudur, which is a Buddhist monument. And these are enormous monuments, magnificently designed, magnificently, built.
Yeah.
And now quite magnificently preserved. They're great experiences. Have you been to Cambodia?
Yes.
Okay, well, you don't have that experience.
Yeah.
It's something, isn't it?
It was one of those places where I couldn't understand what was going on. Right. So
because you're probably trying to look at it through Indian eyes.
Yeah.
How does this relate to a South Indian temple? Well, it doesn't really.
Yeah.
I mean, only in small details. The whole conception.
Yes.
This temple mountain on different levels.
Correct.
Strictly symmetrical. Entrances from 4 sides, all leading in.
Yeah.
These are principles which you find in India, but never done like that.
Right.
So they're like principles that are realized in a different scale, in a different imagination.
Yeah. So the axis that you spoke about, right? Like
that operates.
The mandapas, do those exist? And
they do have these halls that you walk through, of course.
Yeah.
And they have these little shrines all arranged symmetrically, and then they have all these water bodies around it. And of course, they are cosmograms.
Yes.
They're meant to represent the structure of the universe.
Yes.
Well, Hindu temples are also supposed to do that.
Yeah.
But they operate differently.
Yeah.
We don't have any temple that looks like Angkor.
Yeah.
Remotely.
Yeah. It's, I mean, even the ones in Indonesia, I went last year and I, again, couldn't make head or tail of it. Right?
No, but you will find that, certain motifs.
Yes.
Makaras, these aquatic monsters, open their mouths.
Yes.
And there are these garlands.
Yes.
On a lintel.
Yes.
Above a doorway.
Yes.
We have this in
those
India.
Sort of,
We have these in the Chalukya things. In
Yes.
Badami, you'll see them. We have them in Indonesia, and we have them in Angkor.
Right.
So we are wondering whether the artistic ideas, arrived in Southeast Asia from these parts of India. Because the east coast of, let's say, Andhra and Tamil Nadu are the best place to set off to Southeast Asia. And they were, of course, trade. So we've done Southeast Asia, which is still very problematic. We don't really understand this process.
Right.
We know that there were mercantile connections.
Yes.
Brahmins obviously went to these parts of the world. They probably took small little images of Indian gods, so that the gods that they carved in Indonesia or in Java or in Cambodia resemble. We can resemble Vishnu is the same, the Linga is the same, Shiva is the same, but still they look different.
Right.
So they're not complete imitations.
Yeah.
They're reimaginations.
Right. And
they're not Indian craftsmen.
Of course.
Otherwise they'd look the same.
Yeah.
So probably the people who took them, who transmitted this tradition, were not the artists, but they were probably merchants.
Right.
You know, I've got this model. Here's a merchant. He's got a regular shipping route down to I don't know where, to Siam, Thailand. He's very devout as a Hindu. He has these little bronze images of I don't know Shiva and Vishnu or whatever.
Yeah.
And when he's when he settles there or when he visits there, he sets up a little shrine. And so they have these little models.
Right.
And then they decide to do them local artists in their metallic or stones.
Right.
And they do magnificent images artistically. They're absolutely superb.
Okay, so I think I have a lot of questions. We could go on forever, but I think we'll end that there. But also, I think you have this beautiful book that's come out recently, which is all about Hampi. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the photographs and the process of making this book? And
well, this is a book that's based on more than 40 years exposure to this site.
Yeah,
which we, together with John Fritz, an American archaeologist, and an Australian photographer called John Gollings, that we all worked at this site for many, many, many years.
Yeah.
And we, of course, produced books and guidebooks and things. So this is the reissue of a book from many years ago, completely redesigned, absolutely beautifully put together, with photographs taken in the 1980s in black and white.
Yes.
And we felt that black and white works particularly well with this granite landscape. It's very sensitive to tonal range. Color obliterates that because it does something different.
Yes.
And you can see from this jacket, even at a distance, that the landscape, the granite landscape, engulfs the architecture.
Yeah.
And that is the magic of Hampi.
Yeah.
And so this book has just been published here in Bombay. And I'm hoping that many people here in India will be able to buy it, enjoy it, and learn something from it of the work that we did there.
Yeah. The photographs there, this is a little bit more my field, so I feel confident talking about it. The photographs are spectacular. I think the fact that they shot on film, not that I'm like a film purist or anything, but the fact that they have been shot on film gives the texture of the material and everything is just spectacular. And the compositions are fantastic. The idea of juxtaposing the granite with the temple and the structures of the temple, it almost tells a story of this is what it would have been, if somebody hadn't built with it. The fact that they're right next to each other, it's really
it's the great attraction of the site.
Yes,
everybody just loves seeing these ruins in this amazing landscape.
Yes,
the landscape's part of the quality.
Yes.
Of the place, of course. Never to be forgotten.
Of course. And I believe you can pick this up on Amazon. So if anyone wants to make purchase, that should be available.
It's available now, yes.
Yes. Thank you, George, for your time.
Thank you, Keshav. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, thank you.
I hope some of it will be useful.
Yes, it certainly will be.